I've learned a lot to do with the whole process of creating a media product. If you look at my original attempt, you can see I didn't have much knowledge about the technologies used to create an effective media product. I was using primarily Photoshop to do this task. Really a software I've had too much experience with, and it shows. I wasn't able to utilize its extensive range of tools to its full potential. The whole page is made up of 3 rectangles, on top of 2 of which is some dull plain text. The third is the picture of the model. The instructions to the model and the photography from me is poor, as he doesn't even look like he's ready. He's also not in a studio or in front of any background which would add any kind of meaning to the overall picture. More unconventional aspects of the cover is that the masthead is far too thick and takes up way too much of the precious space. There is also no text next to the splash image, so the audience has no way of knowing what the article is about. There could also be more sub-images next to the cover lines going down the left third to make it more visually appealing. The worst part is that there's no barcode, so there's no way for the product to be sold to the consumer, which is obviously a massive flaw. I can tell I've used a few conventions. I have become aware of these because of years of exposure to actual magazines. Includes things like knowing the masthead should be at the top of the page and contain the biggest font. There should be a splash image, and there's usually cover lines running down one of the thirds as well. I also had to complete a preliminary contents page. This was done in InDesign, which, like Photoshop, I didn't have much experience with, so I had to use the basic tools like the rectangular shape tool, the line tool, and the text tool. Looking at my contents page, that I didn't have much prior knowledge about what one should look like. It's clear to me now, after doing research, that there should never be so much white space either side of the title, and the layout of the pictures and the text is also quite questionable too. Obviously I didn't just jump straight into creating my final product after completing my preliminary task. There were many stages in between, which ultimately was the reason my final product is so much better than the preliminary task. Firstly, I had to do market research. This is where I found out about various magazine publishers. I learnt about readership, circulation, and social classification for the first time. I then had to apply these to 3 magazines of my choice, for which I also had to collect a cover page, contents page, and double page spread each. Having to research 3 of each not only helped me gain some ideas for my own magazine, but it made it easy to find and identify patterns across the 3. These are the conventions that I would be following. Another part of my market research was having to receive feedback. I used SurveyMonkey to carry out quantitative research. The biggest lesson I learnt from doing this survey is that your questions need to leave no room for ambiguity. I learnt a really quick and easy way of creating a contact sheet in Photoshop, where it would automatically combine all of my selected pictures and put them into an organised layout. I also created a style sheet in Photoshop to experiment with the fonts for my masthead and cover lines. This is where I discovered the stroke effect, which is made a unique design for my masthead. Over this period I'd learnt so much about the conventions that add up to result in a cohesive product, and also the technologies involved in actually making them. It meant that by the time I got around to creating the final product, it was pretty straightforward. Because I'd learnt all the theory beforehand, it meant I could concentrate fully on just producing the 3 pieces. Inevitably, however, there were a few things that I came across during the production stage that I didn't know about, so I had to learn. This is stuff like learning to blur around the model's face to produce a focus effect, and in InDesign linking 2 text boxes so the text would move from the end of one to the beginning of another. Because I'd learnt all this stuff, my final product was a huge improvement compared to my preliminary task.